You say potato, I say art. But just what is art anyway? In Chapter 2, the text explores some major aspects of the visual arts, which shape our understanding and appreciation of it. The first issue that was raised in this chapter has to do with the value of art. I mean, think about it. Have you ever wondered why some art is so much more valuable than other art? The text talks about this and even then explores the very definition of art. The term art is a bit loaded, and we all tend to have our personal expectations of what we feel must be met for something to be called art, even if we're not even aware of our bias. And so this chapter looks at some of these expectations and these ideas that are often attached and surround this highly debated term art. The second major idea affecting our definition of art involves the notion of beauty. It seems like beauty is something that people have come to expect and seek in art. And I think the more you discuss and analyze what makes a work of art beautiful, the more you notice that these characteristics of beauty all around you. Artists like the photographer Edward Weston help us to appreciate beauty in unexpected places, like in this photograph of a piece of cabbage. A true pioneer in the art of food selfies, if you will. The text discussion on beauty also makes us wonder if there's ever a time when we think the non-beautiful would be preferred. I mean, think about it. Why would you intentionally want to make something ugly or cause feelings of disgust or repulsion of viewers? Would there be ever a reason for that? Something to ponder, and perhaps we'll get a chance to discuss that later on in the course. Along with its discussion of beauty, another major idea of art explored in the text involves a work of art's overall appearance. I want you to try a thought experiment and look at these two paintings and think about which one you would award a blue ribbon to. Now, usually when I ask people which painting they prefer, it's actually typically the first painting, the one on the left, which makes us wonder, why is this? Now, I think most would say this because it looks more realistic and lifelike, and that makes me wonder, why is it that so many people believe that art should aim at representing nature more accurately? And I think that many people would say that perhaps they feel this way is because it looks like it took more skill, and that perhaps the artist on the left is more talented than the artist on the right. That's why it may surprise some of you to find out that both of these paintings were painted by the same artist. His name was Pablo Picasso, and he painted the work on the left when he was 14, and the work on the right when he was 27. So why this change of style? Why didn't Picasso, this child painting prodigy, continue to paint in the traditional manner, much to the approval of mainstream society? In order to understand that question, I think you have to consider the time in which he was working. I mean, think about it. What was invented in the 19th century that would change the role of representing realistic images? I'll give you a hint. Say cheese. That one of the reasons that the camera was such a game changer is that before photography, one of the main functions of the artist was to record and commemorate and document events and people as realistically as possible. And so when the camera was invented, it literally turned the art world upside down. And maybe this is how the artists were feeling. And so, yeah, with the camera, a lot of artists began to rethink their role. After photography took off, Pablo Picasso famously said, well, now we know what painting isn't. And so for Picasso, painting was no longer about aiming for representational or naturalistic appearances. Painting became a means to achieve something else entirely. And we'll discuss more about Picasso's genius later and why works like the one on the right are considered a masterpiece and sell for over $100 million, and why it would actually take a lot of skill to create such a work. But more on that later. But the big idea is that just because a work of art isn't lifelike doesn't mean that it didn't require skill or as much forethought. It usually just means that the artist had different intentions and different goals. And we see abstraction used for various reasons throughout all of history, and we see it becoming more mainstream in Western cultures after the spread of photography. And while some artists remained intent on rendering the human body or nature as naturalistically as possible for their own reasons, other artists looked to abstraction to best communicate their ideas. Explorations of abstract art eventually led up to what we call non-representational art, or art that doesn't necessarily depict a particular thing from nature. When some people see works like this, they're often unsure what to make of it or how to talk about it. To that, I would say that it's important to realize that this style of art also has the ability to communicate thoughts, ideas, and feelings, even if the imagery isn't directly linked to something that we can recognize from nature. I think we would all agree that music doesn't have to have words being sung in order to communicate a mood or idea. And in the same way, art shouldn't need to have recognizable imagery in order to communicate either. Aside from mere appearances, another major aspect of the notion of art has to do with meaning. Now, a lot of the videos in this class discussing art will often talk about the meaning of a work of art. And oftentimes, in order to understand a work of art, it really is important to look at the work's iconography or its use of symbols in order to communicate. Now, one of my favorite paintings is this painting by Jan van Eyck. One of the things that I love about it is all of the amazing details, which just symbolize all different kinds of things. I love it. It's like a novel that I could keep reading for the rest of my life. Amazing. The last thing I wanted to cover from this chapter about understanding art is the importance of a work's context. If you didn't know about the context behind the sculpture, yeah, you could pause for a few moments and admire its craftsmanship and style. But when you understand the fact that this would have originally been placed in a linguist's staff in Ghana, Africa, it completely changes the framework in which you view and understand this work. So, audience, beauty, appearance, meaning, context, these are all things that attach themselves to the notion of art. And I think if you want to make the most out of your aesthetic experiences, these are some ideas to really take into consideration. So that's it for chapter 2. Until next time.